U.S. President Barack Obama was sworn in on the steps of the Capitol building just a few hours ago for his second term in office. The President and First Lady currently watching the parade on the streets of Washington, D.C. before heading for the Inauguration Ball. Busy day for them. Brendon O'Connor is Associate Professor for American Politics at the U.S. Studies Center at the University of Sydney. And here in the SGX is our chartman, Daryl Guppy of GuppyTraders.com. Brendon, let's kick this off with you. What do you think Barack Obama's biggest challenges are going to be for his second term in office?
Well, for the first year, it will be the economy. Trying to get the economy back on track. There's some, reasonably positive signs, but unemployment rate is still nearly around 8%, which is a major problem. This debt debate is both, an economic debate and a massive political debate in the United States. And then there'll be the unexpected. The unexpected will be the things that, on foreign policy, probably divert his attention from domestic politics, and a concern about gun policy, immigration. I think will be two things he'll focus on in this first year as well.
So you're optimistic that the whole debate over the debt ceiling, fiscal issues, budget issues will be resolved in the first year? Because some are worried that, look, this is going to drag on for many years and distract him from many of his objectives.
I'm not particularly hopeful. I mean, relations with the Congress have been pretty poisonous, really, since 2010, when the Republicans got control of the House of Representatives. I think Obama is in a moment of strength regarding the Republicans in the House. He's got it over them a little bit, being re-elected, and the Republicans have probably made a few tactical errors in the last few months. So I think there is a moment of opportunity for a bit more sanity on that debate. The United States has a foreign debt, it has to pay it. I think Obama's position is basically right and where he's argued there, but how it deals with the longer term issues of the expenses of Social Security and America's enormously expensive medical system, both private and public, really need to be addressed by mature minds, and there hasn't been a lot of that meeting of the minds between President Obama and the Republican Party.
Brendon, could that diversion on the foreign policy front come sooner rather than later? There is an election in Israel today, and then you look at the turmoil in the Middle East and the North Africa region, the Algeria hostage crisis last week reaching this awful and bloody climax. Clearly, the foreign policy imperatives are once again taking centre stage.
I think this looks the case at this moment, but I really think Obama has realised that the main game is in the Asia-Pacific, that America has probably diverted too much of its attention in the post-Cold War period to the Persian Gulf, to North Africa, and that really the main game of strategic sort of world politics is the Asia-Pacific, Europe to a slightly lesser extent. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a president somewhat less engaged in the conflicts of the Middle East. I mean, of course, America is always going to be concerned about Israel, the sustainability of the state of Israel. It will have a concern about a Palestinian state. But I don't think that this will be the highest priority, as it seemed to be in the second term of Bill Clinton's presidency, particularly towards the end. Obama's legacy will, I think, be about shaping a relationship with China rather than trying once again to broker peace in the Middle East. So I think Iran is the wild card there. I mean, that's the much more difficult issue. But I think there's a lot of signs that Obama does not want to see American resources drained by an over-concentration on Middle Eastern politics.
You almost preempted my next question, Brendon. This pivot towards Asia by the US now is really an effort, correct me if I'm wrong, to contain or to engage China primarily?
Well, I think it's a realization that this is the most important relationship in world politics, and that for a pretty long period of the 21st century, most of the 21st century, maybe the first 10 years, that relationship probably wasn't given the top billing that it should have received because of a war in Iraq, a war in Afghanistan, all the resources being put into the war on terror. But I think there's been a very important shift in the mindset, and also just the responsibilities in Iraq have been, of course, taken away from the US, has allowed the US to focus much more sensibly on that relationship with China and relations in the Asia-Pacific. So I think it's not a containment, but it's a sense of how do we work this out? Really, it's a kind of learning relationship that Obama is involved in at the moment. And I think that will be very interesting to follow in the next 4 years, to how things will, I think, be pretty significantly different to what they were at the beginning of the Obama presidency in terms of prioritising the relationship with China.
You know, Brendon, listening to Obama's speech, he made a pretty strong case for supporting alternative energy. Do you think there's going to be action to back the rhetoric?
I think that was a very interesting aspect of his speech, this pivot, you might say, back to global warming, an issue he talked a lot about in 2008 and then seemed to go very quiet on for most of his presidency for the first term. So I think he, in his heart of hearts, is concerned about that issue, realises that the science is pointing in very negative directions. What he can achieve is difficult. The Congress has not shown any enthusiasm for what Americans call cap and trade legislation, so it's something I think he might be willing to spend a little bit more of his political capital on, a bit like gun reform, something he's staking a position out, saying this is what I think is the right thing to do, and trying to win the debate in the court of public opinion rather than expect the Congress to act first.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.